Hello and welcome to the Precise Cricket podcast. I'm delighted to be joined by Harry Finch today. Harry, how are you?
Good, Matt. How are you?
I'm very, very well. Firstly, thank you very much for doing the podcast. For those of you who don't know, which you should all know by now, Harry's been doing a batting masterclass with Precise this week at Amber Castle. So we decided to shoot this after day two.
We have, yeah, it's gone well so far, hasn't it?
You enjoyed it?
Yeah, it's been good. It's been good fun, hasn't it?
It's been
one more day to go.
One more day. It's been a pleasure coaching with you. But yeah, it's been alright. Some pretty good kids, I thought.
Yeah, some very good kids. What did we do today? We did some short ball today.
We did.
We peppered a few of them, didn't we, Matt?
We did.
Yeah.
With the tennis racket.
The tennis racket, that was good fun. I think that was more for me rather than the kids, but it was good.
But no, as a coach, sometimes you need to keep yourself on stage.
Yeah.
Which you did.
Which I certainly did.
Which you certainly did. But no, I wanted to get you on, well, obviously because you're here and you're fantastic to speak to about your cricket knowledge. But just talk about your cricketing journey in general and what you've done to get to where you are, what you're doing now. So yeah, I just want to take it right back to the start really. Obviously, Sussex born and bred, is that right?
Yeah, born in Hastings, yeah.
Your old man played for Sussex for a bit, didn't he?
I reckon he played a couple of games, maybe for the twos or stuff. He'll say he played more than that, but I reckon he played a few games for like the board and for the twos and stuff.
So that would have been, what, 30 years ago?
Yeah, he probably would have played in the late 80s maybe.
Late 80s,
early 90s. He's a youngster. Yeah, no, he would have played. My cricket started watching him really.
Where, at Hastings?
Just at Hastings, yeah. So I would have just gone and watched him play with a few of the other lads and their dads that were playing. We just played for hours while they were watching. I think our games are sometimes better than their games on the actual pitch at Water, where you've played yourself. You had a couple of seasons there, but. Yeah, so me, it was probably 8 of us in total. We used to just have a net, play football.
Really? That's awesome. So when your dad's playing, you can all go down and play on a Saturday. So that's your earliest memories of the game?
Yeah, and playing on the patio outside the kitchen with my brother. Yeah. Just used to play for hours. I used to let him win. Mum would got on it me.
Always let their young brother win.
Yeah, the deal was I got to choose what was on telly, and he won. So. But yeah, I'd play in the backyard with him. We'd play all sorts, and then, as I said, like just up at Warner in Hastings, just playing all day and just loving it.
All day, every day.
Yeah, everything.
Cool. And then you're at Sussex until obviously very recently. But we'll touch on that later on. But you got on the academy, didn't you?
Yeah.
And I remember you made your debut for the first team when you were still on the academy. Is that right? In Holland.
Great. Matt, that's a great.
And the reason,
I forgot about that.
Do you know the reason why I remember?
Why?
The reason why I remember it is because I played for Scotland 2 days before, a day before.
Yeah.
And Robbo said, "Oh, you'll be playing in the game.
Yeah.
We're going to fly you out." So I finished playing for Scotland. I flew from Edinburgh to Amsterdam Airport, and then the game wasn't in Amsterdam.
No, it was in Rotterdam.
It was in Rotterdam.
Which was a shame.
And I had to get a taxi from Amsterdam to Rotterdam.
Yeah.
I then got there, and it was raining. And Robbo said, "Oh, we're not going to play you. We're going to play Harry. It's bowling the bats."
Yeah, that's it. I remember that. I remember that really well.
Yeah, I remember it so clearly because I think it was my first or second year. I just got in the white ball team, and he was like, "You're not playing. We're playing Harry." And I was like, "Who's Harry?" He's like, "Oh, he's 16, 17 year old academy. Yeah. He can bowl team." I was like, "Okay, fine." But I remember it so clearly because I got into the hotel at like 6 a.m. in the morning. Oh no, it must have been 10 a.m. in the morning. Yeah. But I flew it late, and I had to stay on the airport floor because there was no hotel. So that was my day in Rotterdam.
And you had to carry the drinks. I mean, it rained.
It rained, and then I subsequently played there for Scotland maybe like 6 years later. Yeah. And 4 days was washed out. I'm still in the same hotel. So I hate Rotterdam. I hate Rotterdam. That was your debut, wasn't it?
I do, but that was my it would have been my list day and Sussex day. I shouldn't know how old it was.
I reckon he was last year at school.
Certainly wasn't able to drive.
No.
So
I reckon he was 17, 18.
I remember that. I remember being in the pub the night before, the professional athletes we are in cricket, and then I remember that was just a big eye-opener for me, especially watching Murray Goodwin have a few pints.
Murray was still playing?
Muzz was still playing. Yeah. My early years with Muzz. So
wow. Yeah, it must have been.
Yeah, that was massively out of the blue. I mean, it doesn't really feel like my debut because it was. I think I bowled 2 overs for 4. So my economy rate in this day is to this day.
Did you bowl 2 overs?
I think I've only bowled 2 overs. We'd have to check it, but I maybe bowled a couple more.
So if you're listening out there, you could start your career as a bowling all-rounder at 17. Yeah. And 25, 26, you'll be a batter that doesn't bowl.
Or try and get a bowling back. One week I'm bowling leg spin, the next I'm bowling seam. But yeah, no, I do remember that. That was. yeah, it's just, I mean, it's a different experience when you're that age and playing with blokes, and you just in awe of everyone, really.
And talking about that, that's a good point. That's something I want to touch on. You're going from that environment of school cricket, academy cricket, doing well and being one of the best players in your age group, to then getting thrown into the first team, which you said you had they had a couple of beers the night before in Amsterdam, Rotterdam, before your first game was an eye-opener. How was that transition? How did you find that? Not so much from a technical point and a game point, because you're put in that situation because you're good enough.
Yeah.
How was it from a mental standpoint? Because that's the thing a lot of people struggle with when they go to that next bit from club cricket to academy or academy to first team. How was that mental step up for you?
Well, I think first and foremost it's different for everyone.
Yeah.
I think for myself it took me a long time, I think, to feel like I was a part of the squad there, and that's got nothing to do with the guys that are there, because the guys that are there, especially in the early years, were great blokes and we're in such a successful team. It's just probably me, myself, I don't think I properly got rid of that feeling of in awe of some of these guys, maybe until I was 22, 23, which is probably quite a long time. I reckon it took me a good 3 or 4 years to properly be myself in that environment. And look, other people it might take a year, some it might take longer, but it was a massive thing I had to try and get over, because I absolutely love cricket. I do enjoy my football a bit more, but I do love cricket. And my heroes growing up, especially at Sussex, were Michael Yardley, Luke Wright, and Matt Pryor as well. And then to suddenly be in a dressing room and they're talking to you, didn't know what to say. Literally didn't know what to say. Sometimes didn't want to go in the change room because they were in there, because I didn't want to go in and have that conversation.
When do you reckon it changed for you? Because I know, speaking to people from my point of view, I found exactly the same thing. Maybe through that, not 3 or 4 years, definitely a couple of years.
Yeah.
But I found when I started to play a few first team games and get respect from the older guys, that's when I found it change. I thought I could have a more of a relationship with them. But saying that though, just thinking about it now, you would have been, what, 18, 22 when you say, you felt right. Some of these guys you're playing with are still like 34, 35, they're a different generation.
Yeah, I think for me it wasn't necessarily the cricket, because not that I didn't play I didn't play huge amounts of first team up till I was that age. For me it was more about the socialising and stuff, and actually being acknowledged as a person. And I think I gained a lot of confidence when you start to, of course, when you get around the first team, you start getting out for dinner with them and stuff. But definitely, the longer I was there, the more I got to know these people, the more you realise they are just normal blokes. Like, they're all just normal blokes who happen to be good at cricket. So I reckon it was more to do with around that and about us people rather than the cricket. But I definitely, obviously, the more time you spend around them in the first team, I think it naturally changes. And that's why you've got to take your hat off to people who are able to come from the age of 18 or 19, go straight into a first team. As a young lad at Yorkshire, remember that Harry Brook, who I don't know him as a guy, but from the outside you look at him, walk into an environment like that, and he's just gone in there and just nailed it.
How old is he? Young?
He's probably 19, 20. Like, I haven't played against him, don't know him. But it's just your perception from the outside is that's hats off to go into an environment like that.
No, definitely.
But I definitely would say it's more to do with the social side rather than the cricket, definitely.
So obviously the social aspect, I do think is a massive environment in a professional environment. You know, it's different from football and rugby, because as cricket you're away for 4 or 5 days, sometimes even up to weeks from then, playing different formats, which is tough. And you are going out for dinner with these guys. But from a playing perspective, then, how was the transition as well? Was that tough? Did it take you as long, do you think? Because I remember watching you back. It must have been very early on in your career, and you got 92 or 93 against Glamorgan. Not many balls.
Living with you, then back with you, didn't I? Yeah.
Harry also lived with
you. Yeah, I also did live with that.
Season?
One of my early seasons, yeah.
That was good, some of that.
Was a good start.
Some of that.
What?
I remember some days you used to wake me up listening to Ashes cricket. That's how much
good banter I was, yeah. What was... Yeah, I don't know. I would say I'm a part of me really wants to get that player back. Okay. Definitely. I feel like I've changed quite a lot since.
As a person or as a player?
I probably naturally a bit of both, but
you
more so.
Matured.
Yeah, obviously matured as a person, but there's aspects of my batting when I look back at my early years, and I didn't think as much then. I think a lot more now, which I get in my way probably at times, but my batting then, I mean, that was probably one of the best innings, even to now, I've ever played. And I was
everything coming.
I was 18, 19? I think I got given a, well, for those that don't know, I got given a real token game at the end of my 50 over cop against Morgan.
It was a short game.
No, so I was down to bat at 6, and it rained halfway through our innings. I think we only lost 5 or so overs. Anyway, it got to a point where I think we were 160 for 2 or something, or 30 overs, maybe 28, whatever. And Joycey just came up to me. You know, we were one down, and Joycey came up to me and just went, "Harry, go on, get your pads on, you can bat," instead of me. And I sort of, again, like Joyce, I literally was sat there like a little kid, like, and I was like, "Alright, fine, chuck him on." As soon as I chucked him on, Craig Chopra, he got out for 50 odd. So I then walk out and I'm batting with Luke Wright, and obviously I'm bricking it because it's like, it's probably my proper debut, and also like, I'm batting with Luke Wright.
Wasn't it?
I don't know if it was on TV. No, I don't think it was on TV. It was a decent crowd. It was probably like 80% capacity and blah blah blah. But
so
I just went out there and about 500 people. Loads of people. Blind man and his dog. Yeah, it's brilliant. But yeah, no, I remember going out there and I reckon I was 20 off 25 balls or something, and just got that feeling of, oh my god, what am I doing here? I'm rubbish. But actually, the perception was I actually was doing perfectly fine.
Doing well.
But I actually got to that.
I think I was next to come in.
I think you were, yeah. I got to that. I don't know if we're allowed to swear on this, but the effort point, and the fucking factor, basically.
Sorry, parents to be listening with kids, but Josh Butler does have that written.
He does.
And they did put it in the paper, so we're only quoting what the greats of the game doing.
Correct. I got to that point because I think I must have died a few up, and I just thought, fuck it, I've had enough of this, and I just walloped one of the seamers over mid-on for 6.
It was Hogan.
Probably, and then just from that moment
I remember clearly, it's clear as day.
Yeah, I just from that point on, I just, as you said, everything came out of the middle. I did sweep Hogan and eventually for 6 later on. And
by the way, you're not doing yourself any credit there. You didn't just sweep him; you hit him out of the ground at home.
Yeah, probably. Yeah,
I remember it.
I was in a bit of a zone, so it's. But that to this day was probably the best innings white ball innings I've ever played, definitely. And
so what's changed then since then? It's interesting because not for, and the reason I want to touch on it's not why you do it, but lots of players go through it. Yeah. Lots of club players do it who have a great game on a Saturday in the first team, any division, and then all of a sudden 3 weeks later, like, I don't know why I'm not doing anything different. What do you think it is? Because cricket is a very mentally challenging game.
Yeah, and I literally that's as simple as you've answered the question. But it's purely mental. It's 2 things. It's mental and it's looking too much into technique. Your techniques, look, you do have to have a certain level of technique, as you know, to play to a certain level. However, to get yourself from being a good player to a great player, I don't think is technical. Or get yourself from being an average player to a good player, it's not technical, it's mental. It's got nothing to do with technique. And I would analyse way too much on my technique or look at other people's techniques and try and take from what's good about them into my game.
Concentrate on what you do well.
Rather than focus on what I'm doing well. And it's a harsh lesson to learn because I'm sure we'll touch on it later. Obviously, not at Sussex now, and I would say that's probably as having a bit of reflection, is probably the main reason. But the player who I used to gun it from the age of 14, 15 in the academy, start really well on the staff, would dominate in the 2s, and then got a few chances in the first team, did really well in 50 over cricket, showed a got 100 against Pakistan really early. This is all really early on in my career.
I batted
at the point you batted me, you got me when I got 100.
It's a lovely photo of me and you.
Yeah, it's a nice photo. For me, that phase, hardly any thinking. It was just playing and not trying to copy other people. It's just playing how I play, not how anybody else plays. And you just go out there and you just focus on where you're trying to hit the ball, and you're not worried about what your hands are doing, what your feet are doing. And the only reason I got into a place where you start thinking too technically is because I'm so ambitious. I want to play for England. I want to play as high as I possibly can. And because of my curiosity in that, I have a tendency to tinker way too much. And for those guys that are, whether your goal is to play for England or your goal is to get from second team club cricket to first team club cricket, I don't think, if you're going to constantly tinker, from my experience, that's really not been the right thing to do. I've really struggled doing it.
But people do it every week.
Of course, and I'm certainly not the only one who's ever done it. There are people doing it right now, there's people who have done it before. But I know from my experience that it is the worst thing I've ever done is looking at other people and seeing somebody do something else. Well, I might not be able to do that, but they also might not be able to do something I can do.
So what got you to that point then? I know you said it's ambition, but was it coaches coming up to you saying, have you thought about this? Was it senior players saying, you don't do this well, you need to do that? Or was it just a combination of saying, right, this is what Ed Joyce does?
It was...
Mark Davis says this, Mark Davis says this to you, as your coach.
Yeah,
no, you've got 5 or 6 different people speaking to you, and you forget to watch the ball coming down.
Yeah, no, it's probably. I mean, it would be completely unfair of me to sit here and blame coaches. I think it's my fault for listening to too many people. It's not because people at the end of the day, especially when you're a nice lad, they're just going to offer you advice and try and help. It's down to the player to be a filter and take in what you need. And
that's hard. I'm a challenger.
Really hard.
That's hard as a youngster.
Of course it is. And I was way too open to talking to people too much and listening too much, which is a very good thing to do. It's very good to be curious, but you've got to be careful with it as well, because you do have to focus on what you do well. And a lot of the time when I've played, I've not been the best version of myself. I've tried to take bits from other people.
So I've got a theory on this, right?
Go on.
I think, I do like a theory. I think people who are, I'm going to use the phrase, not as smart as others, i.e. stupid,
yeah,
have no filter, when they go into an environment like a professional environment and do well first, they do well because they have no perception of anything around them, they have no perception of their technique, and they just see the ball and hit the ball.
Yeah.
And I think that only gets you to a certain point.
Yeah.
And I think people who think too much about the game, so you start well and you give and you have another period, will have a better career than those other players, because over time they'll then work out what works and what doesn't. Whereas the person with no common sense, or fits in, goes like a duck to water straight in there, over time that technique which they started will only get to a certain point. And I've seen many players come in and nail it, they'll only get to a certain point.
Yeah.
But then I've seen players who go and do well, don't do as well, then they'll do well, and then they'll kick on again. It's almost like that second wave.
Yeah. I would have to.
That's my theory.
I'd have to probably agree. There's definitely something to that.
Because it has what you've played against players. I can name players now. There are stupid players that do very, very well because they don't think about it.
Yeah. But I think that's the.
They don't get to a certain point.
We're only really mainly talking about batting here, but the art of performance is to. I mean, I've just started to read a hell of a lot. I do take quite a big interest in psychology of sport. Yeah, no, you believe it or not, a lad from Hastings reading is unheard of, but it's.
Do you read or do you audiobook?
No, I read. I like reading. Yeah,
Do you find it relaxing?
Yeah, but I read for sort of education purposes. Like I'm reading a lot of sort of psychology books at the moment and performance books.
Have you read the book Golf's Not a Perfect Game?
I've read. Yes, I have read that one.
If you haven't,
it's a good book. Really,
it's about routines and how golfers should play the perfect shot every time, but they can't.
Yeah.
Because the ball's stationary, so in theory you should.
Yeah.
It's called Golf Is Not a Perfect Game by Dr.
Bob Rotella.
Bob Rotella, that's it. See?
There you go. I do read.
So if you get a chance to read that, there's another one as well. There's a 2-part series to it. Very good.
It's
I found that helped me.
Yeah, amazing. Really, really good read. But it's also it is all about your mindset, and it's actually, for me, performing the best in any sport is allowing your subconscious to take over.
Mm-hmm.
And
so when you go back to the Glamorgan game,
yeah, you go
subconscious.
Yeah, well, that is purely me playing at my natural best. And look, that's not the only time I've done it, because I would have been a pro for 8 years if I hadn't done it more times, and I have done it more times. But my thing is, it's not being consistent enough, and it's how do you make that more consistent.
That is a good question. How do you?
Well, for me, it's about how often can you stay in the present moment. It might sound like a big buzz, like yogi work, like present or whatever, but it is ultimately that simple. It's how can you, when people play at their best, just talking mainly batting, you stay in the present moment and everything, you kind of forget your innings, don't you? Like when you would have had it, people would have had it listening, if you play sometimes your best inning, you get 100 or whatever, you can't remember. You go back home and you're like,
I can't certain shots.
You can picture certain shots, but you can't remember. Somebody might talk to you about a certain shot you played and you're like, I can't remember that. Because you're just so focused on the present moment, you're not looking too far ahead.
If you're 5 off 30 scratching around, you can remember every ball.
Oh, you remember every ball. You get 0 of 10. I remember every single 10 balls. I remember how I felt every second. But it is that, I think that's ultimately what separates the guys that do well and don't do well. And I definitely think, obviously, the more simple you make it, the easier it is. And that's why you say, like, guys that aren't as sort of switched on technically or switched on to the game of cricket can often do a lot better because they're not actually worried about stuff. Whereas other guys who are a bit more intelligent or cricket nuffs to an extent, like myself, who know a lot or like to know a lot about the game, you do think about it a lot more because you understand the game a bit better and you understand that if you do certain things, it might change that. But going back to, as I said earlier, I've been far too open to changing way too much, and if I haven't done well, it's been, I must be doing something technically wrong. Whereas actually, first thing I should have really looked at, and I've only really worked out the last year, is, well, where was my head at? How was I thinking? Was it being the best version of myself? And if that answer's yes, then tick it and move on to the next one.
On that then, do you find playing well has a direct correlation about not your personal life, but it will get your enjoyment away from the game?
It used to.
When your life is happy outside of cricket, work-wise, it's better for you to play cricket. I'm not using this as cricket, but it could be an accountant working 9 to 5.
Yeah.
If he's crunching numbers all day and he's got a rubbish home life,
yeah,
he's not enjoying it for whatever reason,
yeah,
he might bring that personal life into work.
Yeah.
Do you think there's a direct correlation? Because I see some cricketers who are happy as Larry often and they perform.
Yeah, I do. I completely agree. I know that when I'm in control of, when I say in control, but when I have an awareness of what I'm doing away from the game, I play really well.
Would you like to get away from the game?
Yeah, massive. Well, no, yeah. See, I could chat about cricket all day, but I know it's not good for me.
You find it hard to switch off, don't you?
Yeah, really. So I've had to learn ways to switch off, and when I do go away and switch off, as a correlation, I do play a lot better. I train a lot better. I play a lot better.
What do you do to switch off?
Well, I've in the last year and a half got really into golf. For me, it's tough because I absolutely love sport, so I would always just play sport. But I'll always try and make sure in a day off I go and play golf or go and play tennis or something, just to take my mind off it. As I said, I like reading. I've really got into exercise, so I go for runs and stuff. So I go and see my girlfriend or go see my mum and dad, just go for dog walks, just anything basically away from cricket. The last thing I should be doing before I've got a 4-day game or a T20 game the next day is watching England versus West Indies on the TV.
So kind of the day we used to wake up and
it's exactly what it's. But it's also, there's nothing wrong with it as well because if you love the game, you love the game. But I have worked out that I can't be like that because
that wasn't, just to clarify, that wasn't on your days off. That was before training.
Yeah,
you watch like Ricky Ponting, Matt. Yeah, and you go in the nets and try and Ricky Ponting.
Exactly, which is brilliant, but a downfall as well because you don't want to be trying to bat like somebody else. Like that's not. That's different for me. Like, I mean, you look at Marnus Labuschagne and Steve Smith now; they're by all accounts absolute nuts. And Smith shadow bats in his room. I mean, I'm not to that extent, but I've worked out I have to get away from the game. So. Just for example, this weird summer that we've just had now, right? I performed okay in the 4-day stuff, or I certainly did for the first 3 or 4 games. I had a nice routine where we'd always have 2 days practice before the 4-day game. And 2 days out, I'd always bat, I'd face as many bowlers as possible, and ideally the type of bowlers we've got coming up. But then the day before, I wouldn't do any cricket. Cricket was always optional the day before, and I would deliberately not do any cricket. I would deliberately make sure I go and play golf, or do a gym session, or just do something away. Because that's my time to freshen up, and I want to be coming into that game as fresh as possible. Yeah. But that's just for me. That worked for me. I know other guys. I know you had Salty on first here, and Salty's very much sort of little and often. He likes to hit both days, and that's just him. But I know if I do that, my head will go.
So you may have a 2-hour bat. Say the game's on Saturday.
Yeah.
You may have a 2-hour bat on Thursday.
Yeah.
Not play it on a Friday.
Do nothing on a Friday.
Whereas someone like Phil Salty.
Go a few bits on a Friday.
Yeah. But FINCH doesn't do that way.
No.
But on someone like you said, like Salty, we might do a 45-minute hit on a Thursday, 45-minute hit on a Friday.
Correct.
Little and often. So
that's,
the same amount of time and volume essentially, but split differently.
But it's done differently. He'll also be somebody who won't go home and watch the test, for example, all day because it's not what he's like. Like he's going and play with his cat Sergio or something like that. But whereas I know if I'm sat at home on my own, this is where it takes a lot of self-discipline. Because I will, if cricket's on, I'll just put it on.
And background almost, isn't it?
Yeah, and I won't always. Sometimes I watch it as a fan, but sometimes, a lot of the time, without subconsciously, I'll be watching it, looking at somebody's technique, and
judging.
Of course you are, and that's exactly what you're doing. And I've worked out that's the worst thing for me. And look, it takes time to work that out, but I know that for me, doing that's not going to help me perform. And ultimately, your job is to perform if you're a professional cricketer. So
it's performance culture, isn't it? It doesn't matter how you get it, it's how many or
exactly.
wickets, it doesn't really matter. So moving on, obviously you touched just then on the COVID summer, which was difficult. Obviously a difficult summer all round, really, for everyone involved, not in sport but just in general. How was that? Because for those of you who don't know, obviously Sussex have decided to not renew your contract, which, you know, some will argue for it that you should have done, like myself. But with that in mind, let's go back to the start of the summer. How was that mentally, knowing you're in your last year of contract, COVID hit summer, you've got to perform, but you don't know how you're going to perform? Because I know we've had chats before this, coffees, because, you know, no secret, we speak about the game quite a bit together, and we've met for coffees before you started playing, and it is difficult, but I want people to understand what it's like as a player going through that, because if you look 2 years ago, you've arguably had your best summer ever in red ball cricket. Last year you had your best white ball summer, you averaged 38 or 40 in 50 over cricket, 9th leading highest run scorer in 50 over cricket at the club. You know, 4-day cricket probably hasn't gone as you would like, but at the same time you say you feel like you've learned the game. So you've got all that. You've had a good 2018, okay 2019 red ball cricket, 2020 your contract up, COVID's hit. How were you, just so people, I just want people to understand what it's like as a pro sportsman, because they'll say, oh, COVID's here, oh, you didn't get enough runs, that's why I didn't. But that's not the case. It's how did you feel mentally going into the summer?
Yeah, well, I think firstly, there's a few things to get into before we even get into the summer. So actually, if you say that I had an okay 2019 is very generous. I had a really poor 2019.
Is that a red ball?
I had a couple of knocks in white ball that were good. My red ball year was awful last year, and what we were talking about earlier about tinkering, changing a lot, I had a different technique every game because I thought my technique wasn't working, and actually it's to do with your headspace. But anyway, so to give some clarity, I came off I had 2018.
Let's start from 2018.
Yes, so 2018.
January 2018.
Worked with Mike Yarding all winter. Awesome. Played really well. Like my proper first year in the first team. Played well. I think I was the second leading run scorer in the 4-day stuff. Was the leading run scorer in the 50 over team. Played 2 games in the T20. I mean, Sussex's T20 is a joke. Like, it's a franchise team. So without being arrogant, I'd like to think I would have played more T20s if I was at another county. But to carry the drinks for that years, it's hard work, but it's also a bit like, I just would love to be playing again. Because the team's awesome. Anyways, I played a couple of games there and actually played really well, which was really pleasing. I've come off a really good year in 2018. Probably, you know, it was slightly disappointing not to have maybe got an award.
Do you feel like things have started clicking for you?
I guess so. I certainly worked really hard that winter again, but looking back at it now, again, like, probably did too much technical stuff over the winter rather than actually trying to develop certain shots and stuff, which then led to a bit of a downfall in 2019. And, you know, of course it is all down to me, but I struggled not having Yards around. Yards ended up being the second team coach, and not that we lost that relationship, we've always had an awesome relationship, but he wasn't around as much. So didn't have that sort of face-to-face contact, and then I did really struggle. Got dropped from the 50 over team, whether that was rightly or wrongly. Like, in my eyes, I obviously thought it was wrong, and I thought my record that I had behind me deserved enough to play more games, and I also hadn't done exactly that badly. So that felt hard done by, and if I'm honest, I didn't really get over that. And if I had my time again, I would have handled that a lot better, because I'm not proud of the way I did handle it, especially on the day. You know, I moped around a bit and should have been a much better team player. But I was very disappointed and hurt. But then didn't really recover from that. Fed into my 4-day stuff. Because it actually started okay in the 4-day stuff, and then it fed into my 4-day stuff, and I was absolutely nowhere. Then got dropped from that. And then I probably had the worst week ever of my cricket life, where I got my big recall back to the team because we had a few injuries. So we had a 4-day game first, and then a T20 game on TV against Essex.
Right.
And I have bigged this week up like you wouldn't believe. I'm like, this is my chance. Gladiator, come on, let's have it. Like, this is my chance. We played the 4-day game against Middlesex. I get a pair.
Oh, mate.
Get a pair. I remember I got seed off one of the bowlers. I think Mercer nicked me off the shoulder. First innings, sort of thought, I can't do it about that. Fine.
Next innings, I'm
fine. Boof.
LW.
I think so, I can't remember. But I'm gone here at this point. Like, gone. Anyway, I know I'm playing. I got told I was going to be playing the next 2 T20 games. I think Dell had gone and played for Bermuda, so I was going to play in about 6. So I'm like, awesome, cool, got a chance. So I'm playing S6. I fielded nicely, did the first game. I'm a good fielder, so I'm always good to field well. I fielded well. We're in some strife, like randomly. We're 60 off for 4, and I come out. And for some reason, first ball, I tried to reverse sweep Harmer. He had 1 point mid-wicket, and I thought, well, it's my shot. I'm just going to play it. Absolute nonsense. But you've got to understand, like, the context. My head's gone at this point. Like, as in, I'm not thinking clearly, because if you're thinking clearly, we're in the shit, really. We're 60 for 4. We just need a partnership, and I'm batting with David
How many
Visa.
years did he have to bat as well?
Oh, plenty. Like 10, probably.
So you knock it around 3 or 4 years.
Exactly. Like, and you've also got David Visa, who people listening will know exactly. Awesome T20 player.
Tease it up, isn't
Tease it up. My job is to probably get 20 off 20 and give him the strike, basically. But I'm like, nah. Reverse sweep.
I'm showing you boys.
So I go down to reverse sweep it. Absolutely plumb. Missed it. Plumb. Out. Get a text off my dad. Like, that was worth staying up for. And it on TV, etc. But I remember. Well, I'll be completely honest. I was in tears after the game. But I went and saw my mum, who came to watch, and I just remember hugging her in tears. I was like, I'm gone here.
Is this at the ground?
Yeah, at the ground. Nobody saw it, but she was. My mum was like, "You need to get away. You need to sort yourself out, like, because something's not right here." And I remember just breaking down with her, and I was like,
but that's the brutality of sport.
Yeah, but that shows you where I was at mentally, because I'm not thinking clearly about anything, and then all emotions start coming out. So I was talking to her, and then I knew I was done. And then we go to the next game, and I'd been told I was going to play the 2 games, but I'm like, there's no way. Like, thinking about being a coach now, there's no way you should be picking this guy. This guy's gone. Like, it's obviously brutality of sport, not playing the next game, and they played somebody else instead.
Did they take you with you?
Took me with me, so I went on the bus.
It's even worse sometimes.
Even worse at times, which I'm not blaming them at all, because there's no way I should be playing, like, especially after the week I had. But going back to it, I just brought the week up, built it up way too much, and just everything was on that week. I've got to do well this week, and then when you don't do well, I just went poof and crashed. And I reckon I had a month where I was just a bit nowhere. Anyway, I come to the back end of that season. This is the 2019 season, and I'm in the 2s. And suddenly, I just let go of everything. I'm just like, do you know what? I'm just going to
play. You calling me and you like got 150 or something?
Oh no, I think I scored 200 in a row, a 70 odd, and then got a double under, got 220 odd. So I finished the season really strongly. Which was a silver lining on a really poor year, but I sort of thought, oh, there's something there. Whatever I did in the last month and a half.
Did you find something click, maybe?
Yeah, mentally clicked. Mentally, that's when I learned, right, I need to get away from the game. There's a few things I need to focus on. I can't be thinking too technically. I need to be more.
So those highs of 2000. So I put it in a nutshell.
Yeah.
So you had those highs of 2018, doing well. 2019, okay year.
Yeah.
And then you had a month snippet at the end.
Yeah.
Where you feel like you got your breakthrough of how you can combine 2018 season into an okay 2019 series to make you a better player in 2019.
Yeah, and obviously you're playing a standard less, so obviously, look, I didn't read into it the scores that much, because I know I've dominated at that level before, and I know I could do it again. But I was really sort of, it opened my eyes at the consistency of it, and I basically just looked at. I then took that into, so now we're moving to the winter just gone. So I then put myself in a really, because I signed a 2-year contract in 2018, had an awful year 2019. I'm then massively under the pump for the year that's just gone, because obviously I performed poorly, and that's just the way sport is when you're contracted and not on long-term deals and stuff.
It's not like football, you get fired.
No, it's not like that. You're 2 years, and if you don't do well, you're gone. Thanks for coming. Like, that's how ruthless it is.
It's not you're on 50 grand.
No, exactly. So. We go into the winter, and I don't think I've worked as hard as I have done that winter. And for the first time ever, didn't work on anything technically over the winter. Just focused on game plan, focused on what I want to get better at, focused on process, which is the most important thing. So that's when I worked out in that month bit in the season what a process is and what it is for me. And I weirdly quite like singing when I bat. And it's just a way of, people talk about breathing, talk about singing, talk about picking spots and looking at things. It's the best thing Ross Taylor ever told me. He said when he bats at Lords, he looks up at the clock in between balls and he just focuses on the clock and watches it go round. And that keeps him in the present moment and keeps him safe. It's one of the best things I ever got told.
Interesting.
And then I found that singing helps massively. I know for me, my process was my head back to the stumps and an early bass. But then I worked so hard that winter, lost 10 kilos or something.
Wow.
Yeah, October I went to France and Italy, and I let myself go a little bit.
Nice.
And then came back and lost 10 kilos up to the summer. Worked really hard all winter. We went to Cape Town. You've got to understand at this point as well, I'm under the pump a little bit.
You're in a good place.
I'm in a really good place, but I've got to perform. Dizzy hasn't seen me all winter because he's away in Australia. And I went out to Cape Town in pre-season and I played really well. Like, we did loads and loads of middle practices, and I was a standout batter. I played really well. I was the most consistent. I scored the most runs. I was a standout batter, and I even started bowling again. I was bowling okay. I was feeling, and also correspondingly, felt in a really happy place. Like, off the pitch, I was really calm and settled. Started talking up more in the group because you naturally feel more confident. And then COVID happened, obviously while we were out in Cape Town, which then suddenly your anxiety levels start to go through the roof because you're like, well, when the hell are we going to be back? What's the season going to look like? Are we going to have a season? Are they going to sign us? Like, you just don't know what's going to happen. So that lockdown period was probably tough because I'd worked so hard throughout the winter, and was you know it's like when, and guys will know, it's like when you get in the zone of cricket and you just keep rolling over, you get so used to the pattern of it. It's really hard to then. No one hit for 14 weeks. Yeah, so you're suddenly in such a good place, and then not hitting for that long. And then we came back to training, and I picked up where I left off. I was playing really nicely.
But during that lockdown period, you stayed present, you did your running.
Yeah, no, well, I just did everything you possibly can. You stay professional, and you basically just stay fit and get ready to go.
So how was the pressure then going into those 6 games?
Yeah, so then obviously I know it's a long-winded story of what the last week's been like. But when we go into tough. First game, I was absolutely nowhere. I'd probably just been told not that long before that about a certain situation at the club, without getting too far into it, but I'd been told, so it was very hard going into that first game knowing there's probably a good chance I'm not getting signed by Sussex.
And they said this?
Well, they said it, they sort of said it, and it's...
that stuff is a prior thing.
Yeah, but also like they're only doing their job. They've got to be honest and tell me what's happening. And that first game I wasn't great. It was a bit nowhere. As in, it was on my mind too much. And then the next 3 games played really well because I sort of was like, well, you've got 2 ways of looking at this. You either give up or you go out there and you be positive and you actually try and get something out of this because you just never know if something might happen. And then I played all right. And for me, I saw the summer. It's probably the most consistent I felt batting wise, and it was only a 2-month season, and I just got too many starts. I got 40 odd, I got a couple of 30s, and I got 2 60s. And ultimately, if I turn one of those 30s into a 50 and one of those 60s into 100, I then suddenly had a pretty decent year. But yeah, the pressure of going into that year is tough, and especially when it's
anything you've ever faced it before?
No.
Completely new pressure.
New. Because I remember when I was in my last year, previously a few years back, I didn't feel under pressure because I just felt like they were going to sign me because I was still quite young. Whereas this summer, not at all. Like that, this summer was like, right, I've got to do something. Like, well, not that you always have to do something, but I think because the season was so short, it was like everything just got like intensified and. I handled some aspects of it really well, some aspects of it probably not so well. But it's really tough, and I'm not the only one. There's loads of guys around the county who have let. I mean, I think they normally lose between 30 and 40 players, and this year they lost 70.
Wow.
So which is a hell of a lot. So it's not and it's the way I see it. I don't see it as the end for me, and all I see it as a setback, and I see it as something to learn from. And actually, I've learned a hell of a lot the last 2 years anyway. The main thing being that your mindset is the most important thing rather than your technique. Of course, as coaches we talk about, you do have to do the basics. You have to be able to hit the ball late, you have to be able to hit the ball straight, you have to play the back foot, the basics of the game. But once you get the basics, it's all about your mindset going to the next level. And as I said, it's just about staying positive about the situation. Like, no one knows what's going to happen in the next few months, and no one knows what the game of cricket is going to look like in the next few months. So.
No one does, especially this COVID style next year.
Exactly, so you just don't know. But yeah, the pressure, I mean, back to your question, the pressure of that summer, yeah, it's tough. There's no two ways about it. But a part of you is also like, well, it's professional sports. Is what the game is. It is pressure.
And I think on that as well. You know, you've spoken really well here about the highs, the lows, coming through bad stages, and it's a shame now looking that you're not attached to them at the moment. I know you're in talks with a couple of counties, which is exciting, but you're not in a position to, at the moment, to grow and ride that next wave. So although it's a setback, I think the upside potential of this is huge for you.
Yeah, that's
well,
that's yeah. I think regardless of what I do next, I think I'll probably be a success at it because you learn. You just got to constantly learn. I don't think there's any point in dwelling on stuff that's happened in the past. You just got to take from it what you can learn. Like, and it's. I think even if I had still got signed this year by Sussex, it'd be silly for me to not reflect on the summer because there's stuff you can learn from it. But yeah, it's always as we're talking to you now. I've probably had 2.5 months of knowing this, so I've had time to reflect on it and
process it.
Yeah, and you process it, and you learn. I've learned a hell of a lot over the last few years. And as I go back to it again, as I said, it is so important what your mindset's like, and being the two most important things I've learned is that your mindset's important. You just got to be the best version of yourself. So whether you play club cricket, professional cricket, or you just play village cricket, you can't be trying to copy other people. Yes, you can watch other people and talk to them about what they do, but do it in your way. Whereas I probably spent 2019, as I said, I went through five or six different techniques, and that's purely from watching other people and thinking, oh, well, he does this, like, I need to be able to do that. I'm actually like, well, no, like, you can sweep a seamer, I can sweep a seamer over a square leg, there aren't many people that can do that. So just because he can dong it over the side screen, well, you can sweep it over a square leg for 6. So why don't you just be you? And it's just embracing that. And I remember seeing your locker. I think wasn't that one of your things you put in your locker. I think it was something about play your way.
Play your way.
I think.
I can't remember. But
yeah, I remember you had something around that.
Something like that. So on the locker.
Play your way, not anyone else's way.
Play how you want to play, not how you want you to play.
So
I think that's the great thing, and I think as a player and a coach, you've got to do things how you want to do because some people won't like it, but some people will love it.
Yeah.
And I've never met a coach or a player that everyone likes and loves. Yeah. Some people have their opinions for some reasons. Some people like them for other reasons. So I think to wrap it up, it's been what you said there about 1, mindset, and 2, being the best version of yourself has been really good. And I think everyone can relate. And yeah, it's been fantastic to chat to you.
Lovely, Matthew.
I'm very, very excited to watch your next step, wherever that may be, hopefully still in the professional game. And I wish you the best of luck because you're far too talented to be out of the game for much longer. So Harry, thank you very much.